what you knew of him before you met him and how you knew of him by just his name. Like I mean, clearly I don't know him. A lot of people that are listening to this have never met him personally.
Mhm.
So you just know what you read. And in the
Right.
last couple of years, of course, you read all sorts of scandalous things, negative things, more drug related, obviously some issues with relationships and women. And, it seems like he's been pretty much of a mess, but you know him in a different light.
Mhm.
How did you know of who he was before you met him, and when you met him, what was he like? I mean, you mentioned some things, but
Yeah, so initially on the ride over there, I'm riding with my friend, and she tells me his name, and he's I forget the exact way that she described it, but he had something to do, something like some powerful job, like a senator or something like that. But we didn't know exactly what it was, and he wasn't a senator. So it was just like, okay. And so we get there and we're all hanging out and stuff. And then it's when I'm sitting in his chair and it has a label on it that said Senator Barack Obama, and it had the years that he served in the Senate. And it was a wooden chair, and it clicks because at that time there were so many memes going around of Joe and Obama, those infamous memes that everybody was sharing, and it was, comical. And I instantly put the names together. I did not know that was his son until he told me that.
oh wow, okay,
And I asked him, are you related? And he's like, yeah, that's my dad. And I was just like, no way. And I Googled it right then.
right. So at the point you were going to meet him, you didn't think, oh, here's a guy with a ton of drug problems, and
No.
okay. I'm curious. You said that he had just lost his brother. How did he express that to you?
In different ways over time. I can remember me and him discussing in at Chambridge at his house in McLean about the funeral and how hard it was. I want to say that he had Coldplay or somebody like or had a song at some point for like, I don't know if it was after or what it was, but he would tell me certain details, but he also was very good at deflecting things that, were hard for him to talk about. And sometimes he would try to make light of it.
Yeah.
I can't remember just exactly any like statements and stuff that he would say, but I do know how much like it hurt him losing Bo. And there were times like, we would look through pictures or he would show me something, and he always would talk about how great Bo was as a person and how he would even say that he wouldn't be in the state that he was in if Bo was still alive.
Oh wow. And did he ever talk about his father's emotional state after Bo had passed?
He never really did.
Hmm.
And really, he didn't talk a whole lot about his dad other than the fact that, he felt like he had hurt him and he's always a mess up and he's always a loser of the bunch. And he would say things like that, victimizing himself for his scandals. But no, he never really talked about his dad's, I, personal stuff, I guess.
Hmm.
The only time was, a time that I was in Delaware and Joe knocked on the door and I saw, especially now being a parent, I could really, relate to that. I can't imagine, honestly, the pain that he felt looking at his son who's suffering from, this addiction. And, Joe's one of the most powerful people in the world, and he's watching his son fight a war that he can't pull him out of, His son has to win that battle himself. And it was just that's really the only thing that, was real personal about Joe that I saw and was able to open up to. And Hunter immediately, when he walked in from there, he was just kind of closed off. You don't want to ask, what were y'all just talking about? What'd your dad say or anything like that? You could tell there was some form of hurt.
Right. But you didn't hear Joe raise his voice to him or anything like that.
No.
A little bit into your book, you do talk about the scandal that comes out that Hunter is in a relationship with Hallie, the wife of Bo, his brother who died. First of all, did you know anything about that?
Okay. No. Which before it happened?
Yes, before it happened.
So no, before it happened, I was actually caught off guard because I had seen him a few times and I'm getting to know this guy and then it's out there and I'm just
you
like,
think you're kind of dating him.
yeah, I see him as like, I'm going on a few dates with this guy in Georgetown and I've stayed with him and I'm just like, this is odd. And so, you always hear the media make stuff up and so I sent him a message and I'm like, and because I know, like I said, how much he hated being another scandal. So I sent him a message and tell him, that I'm thinking about him, just checking in. And it was about a day later, he messages me and thanks me for it. And then he wants to meet up shortly after. And I meet him and he has a way of charming himself out of it and making it be like, the media makes it more than what it is. Like it was more of an open type relationship and something that was outed. And so now he just kind of has to like roll with it for a little bit. And I didn't realize how crazy it sounded until I wrote the book. And I'm like, yeah, I get it. Where people are like, what were you thinking? It's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It was like the Hunter package. He made it seem like it was nothing, like it was normal.
Right. So you end up, and we read in the book that you end up spending a decent amount of time with Hallie, or at least being around her. I find that fascinating. So as someone who read about this scandal and kind of after the fact, because, it wasn't like what I normally listened to or followed, but then that was the hook to bring it into almost like entertainment news. Like, wait a minute, this guy, and forget that he was a Biden, but it was like, hold on, there's a guy who ended up dating the wife of his dead brother in a big, powerful family. And that came out. And then there was drugs related to it and may have gotten her into drugs. And that's crazy. Like, to me, that kind of was the icing on the cake of like, wait a minute, there's some problems going on here. So can you tell us a little bit about the interaction with you and Hallie, between him and Hallie, and like, did they seem to think it was weird? Were they like, oh my God, this is shameful, I'm embarrassed. Like, I can't fathom how that went down. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, there wasn't a whole lot of shame that they seemed to show, but they were both in this very dark time, and it seemed like they depended on each other, and then they crossed that line, and now it's like it's too late. You can't take it back, so you got to make it worth it. It was kind of like that because they were very, very toxic. And, I wanted to be respectful as possible and not say anything about Hallie and her addictions and stuff throughout the book because, what she suffered from and her demons and her addiction isn't something that I should talk about if she's not been public with it. And it wasn't relayed. So I went about it a respectful way, but I actually recently heard that she has been candid with it in public with her addiction to cocaine during that time as well. And so they were both just in a dark place. They were both, becoming addicted, or they were addicted at the time. And it was a constant argument 24/7 with both of them. And, it was, and always they couldn't have a conversation without one misunderstanding the other. And then the other one gets defensive, and it was turmoil. It was chaos.
But how did this sort of throuple work out? Like, did she know that you were a girlfriend? Did she, like, how did that play out?
To him, to me, he made it seem that way, that he was kind of seeing me, that this whole media thing was, something that he just kind of had to roll with at the time. And when I first met her, we were going out to dinner and it was awkward because I'd never been in this situation before. And I could tell she didn't know how to act either. And so we just kind of chop it up with small talk and how are you? And she was very pleasant, very nice, sweet woman, and Hunter was doing his own thing. And then we go back and Hallie goes to sleep. She doesn't really hang out with us a lot. There are a few times that I've sit and I've talked to her and stuff, but most of the time when she's there, she was, in another room wanting to lay down or had a headache and I think a lot of that was because, one of the last conversations I had with her, she tells me that she's like, Hunter really trusts you. Like he trusts you with things he would never trust me with. And we have that conversation and I can tell it hurts her to admit that and talk to me about that. And, I can't imagine what she felt because at that point, I don't know if she was in love with him, if she just, was hurt because of losing Beau and kind of depended on that and then didn't know what to do. It was a complicated situation and very odd.
Yeah, I think that unless someone has really lost someone in the way that she did, I mean, it's very hard to understand what it's like. I think they have proven that there are studies that people do transfer that affection to someone else who is also going through it. I know people that died in September 11th. There are, I lost my fiance on September 11th. I know thank you. I became very close to one of his best friends that survived. People used to say, you guys should get together. We never crossed that line, but I do know, had we ever crossed that line, it's like what you're saying, you can never go back, because it's a line that's different than just an everyday person. You share such a loss that it almost bonds you, even if it's not meant to be. But I do know there are plenty of people that lost their husbands or wives in September 11th, and they ended up with another firefighter or someone that they met through that loss, and that so many cases of that after. So I do get that.